Welcome to Ecom Talk. My name is Alexei Leal, and today we have a Larry Lubarsky, aka Watch Me Amazon. It's an 8-figure Amazon seller and e-commerce entrepreneur, selling on Amazon since 2012. You actually beat me by 2 years.
Okay.
He helps sellers save thousands on shipping through 2D workflow.
Yes.
Welcome, Larry.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. So you started selling in 2014, huh?
Yes.
Those are the good old days.
Yes, 100%.
How badly do you wish we can go back to those days, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed since then.
Yes, and as is usually the way with Amazon, when there are changes, none of them are really positive or beneficial for the sellers. It's always something to fuck us a little bit more.
Hell yeah.
But
Some things I do agree they are better, but most of them are not. Most of them are not.
name me a good thing that's better.
Well, I don't know. Optimize your listings. You
Sure.
didn't had that before. You
Sure.
can optimize and get some better conversions.
Sure.
Maybe some communication on how to appeal the listing. Or the format of appealing the listing is much better.
Sure. Agree.
Before it was like you didn't even know how to do it properly, right?
Of course.
Like
the Wild West.
That's a couple of things. The rest is, I would say, the bad things, right?
But it's not that they're necessarily bad. They're just hard. They're things that you have to figure out as a seller. But even back in those days in 2014, the name of the game was Amazon is going to give you all these crazy loopholes that you have to jump through and hurdles that you have to jump over. And the name of the game is figuring out how to do it, how to get around it. If you can do that, then you find yourself in a good position where you can make money. And even now, with all the difficulties surrounding Amazon, a lot of people know it's, harder than maybe it was in the days of 2012 and 2014 that we're talking about. But the name of the game is if you can survive that while your competition is maybe going out of business and you're one of the sellers that can survive it, your business is going to be stronger and better than ever. So I say it's a two-sided coin. On the one hand, I say, let's go back to those days, 2012, 2014. On the other hand, my business is probably 5 times bigger and I'm making 5 times more money than I was back then. Is it a little harder? Is it more complex? Sure. But when you get through those hoops, you find yourself in a better place. And that's the name of the game. I'm usually very optimistic. I'm not very pessimistic at all. And I kind of say those negative things about Amazon to tease you. But the reality is anyone watching this should know the name of the game is Amazon is always going to hit you with new, difficult, interesting things for you to figure out. If you can figure those things out and survive, that's how you know your business is going to be successful. To me, that's literally always been the name of the game.
Yes, totally. I totally agree with you. And a lot of my videos, I always talk about, when any new change comes out, I see a lot of people complaining and I see a lot of people getting mad. And I'm always saying, hey, the faster you adapt to those new changes, the better you're going to be off. You can resist, you can push back, but you're not going to be able to push back against Amazon. You will have to go with the flow. Whatever changes they make, you just make your adjustments to those changes so it doesn't affect you, or it should be contrary. It should find a way to make your things better, right? I know sometimes it's hard. And the problem is sometimes also, believe it or not, and that happens to me, I would say like 3 years ago, like the bigger you are, the more sales you are. In my case, I have multiple accounts. Making those adjustments can take some time. And if you don't make them fast, they can break you, they can really break you.
And I think every successful seller who's been in the business for a while, who has a successful business, they're all going to tell you they all had to deal with some crazy things. I think almost every single successful seller that I know got their account suspended at one point, got their business shut down at one point. And what makes them successful is that they figured it out. They found a solution. They got their account reinstated, or they started their business over from scratch or whatever, but they didn't give up. They kept going. They figured out, they jumped through the hurdles, and now they're even more successful than they were back then. Not
Yes.
like that's usually what I hear from almost anyone who's been doing this business long enough. So anybody who's new, who's watching this, just know that the business is maybe more complicated and there's more things that you have to figure out. But ultimately what that means is that if there's 10 new sellers, 8 of them, they're just going to quit, not because they like couldn't even figure it out, just because they don't want to, right? Just complicated. They're going to stop. They're going to quit. And now there's 2 guys left. And those 2 guys have a bigger piece of the pie. They have less competition. They have a cleaner, runway to grow their business versus the days of 5-6 years ago when it was literally million new sellers every month joining the platform, and it was kind of like a free-for-all. Those days are gone. But again, the sellers that figure the shit out right now, those people are going to make a lot of money.
Right. And it's also the game of lasting, the longer you last in this
Always.
business, the better it is for you. I mean, if you think now the accounts that survived, okay, for all those years, they have so much open for them to the tools that they have, the brands that they can sell. I mean, so many things that basically it's advantage of the other sellers who just starting. But those who start, sometimes they're gonna be in 10 years, they're also gonna be already like experienced and a long account, right?
Yep. So 2 interesting points. One, you mentioned tools. When you and I started selling in 2012 and 2014, there was no tools. There was no repricer. There was no, list scanners or any of that kind of stuff. So that's kind of things that we take for granted. And we have those tools today, and it's much easier to find products. I remember, and I'm sure you remember, just going through lists and Excel files manually. And then the other point, as you said, it's about lasting and longevity. And one of the things I always tell everyone is you will find a lot of Amazon sellers who have been doing this business for a year or less. And many of those people will say, I quit the business, it didn't work out, it was too hard, Amazon sucks, whatever. But you will almost never find someone who is doing this business 3-4 years and they're not successful in making a lot of money. An Amazon seller who's been in the business for 3-4-5+ years and who hates it and who is not making money, those are hard to find, because like you said, it's about lasting. If you can get through that first 12 to 18 months, then it's like you're almost guaranteed to make money and to be successful if, of course, you go about things the right way and stuff like that. But it's only that first year that like filters out a lot of people. And if you can last and survive, that's always been the number one like thing that I point to see if someone's going to be successful or not in this business. It is lasting, it is longevity.
For sure. Yeah, and how you mentioned also in the beginning, whoever starts right now, their biggest struggle is always what to sell, because first their account is very restricted, they cannot find those products, and it is the first barrier, right? Whoever surpassed that barrier, I always say next problem is, okay, where can I get more money to buy those products? Because now I have too many products, now I need funds. You're always going to have some sort of barriers. You just need to understand that those are barriers in any business.
And that's a great problem to have. That's a great problem to have when you have a lot of stuff to buy and your problem is where you come up with the money to buy it. That's like the problem that every new Amazon seller should strive to get into. That's the problem we need. That's the problem that you want to have, because when you have that problem, it's a very good problem, man.
Exactly. Larry, so let's dive into the topic. How can we save those thousands of dollars on Amazon logistics? I know To The Flow workflow, I've been using it for a while, so let's dive in and talk about it.
Yes, so there's a lot of different ways that you can save money with 2D Workflow. To give you a little bit of context, this is first a software that I built for my own business. I built it many years before I released it to the public. When I was building it, I was literally building it for myself. I wasn't building it with an idea to sell it. And one of the main reasons that I was building it for, when I was starting out in this business, I had a warehouse, I have preppers, I had to come in every single day, and I'm sure you can relate as someone who has a warehouse and a prep center. Every single day I would have to come to the warehouse and I would have to physically, my guys would separate the items in the shipments, and I would have to physically print item labels, put it on top of every stack, tell them these are the labels for this shampoo, these are the labels for this vitamin, give them all of that instruction. And I very quickly noticed that if I am not there to do that, if the boss is not there physically to give them the labels and give them the instructions and show them how everything needs to be prepped and packed, then my business would essentially shut down. It got to a point in the beginning where I couldn't take a vacation for a week unless before I left, I came to the warehouse and I printed out like a week's worth of labels and gave it to all of them and left them all that work. The business wouldn't like really run without me in that sense. And the main reason that I built 2D Workflow was for me to be able to make shipments in a portal that my team, that my preppers can log into without having to give them access to Seller Central. And then this system is going to tell them what items they need for the shipment, how to prep them, how to pack them. They're going to press a button. It's going to give them the labels for that item. It's going to tell them how to do everything. It's going to walk them through the box content. And that was the number one solution for me. And while it isn't exactly a saving money solution, it freed me from my business. And that to me is very valuable. And that to me, it does equate to money, because if it wasn't for me, if it wasn't for that, either myself or one of my partners would have to be there giving them step-by-step instructions and giving them all the labels, because we don't really want our employees going into Seller Central and making shipments and all of that kind of stuff. So that's the number one way it was for me. And I don't know if you want me to like share my screen and share 2D Workflow or just talk about it, but I will say there's probably like 5 or 6 or 7 different ways that 2D Workflow can save Amazon sellers lots of money. And aside from the one I just mentioned, the first and foremost way that it's going to save you money, and a lot of people don't count it like this, but it's very important, is it's going to increase your production. If you have, for example, 3 preppers and your business is pumping out, just for easy math, 5,000 units a week, when you implement and learn 2D Workflow, those same 3 preppers are going to be able to pump out 6,000 units, 7,000 units, 8,000 units a week. Same amount of staff, same amount of workers, just the amount that you are going to be able to produce with having a system that manages this aspect of your business is going to be a lot more. So then at the end of the month, when you count all of your expenses, your rent versus how many units you shipped out to figure out what is your cost per unit. If you can go from 10,000 units a month to 15,000 units or 13 or 14 or whatever it is without increasing any of your expenses, that's saving a lot of money. And that's also bringing down the cost of your prep and everything all associated with that. So that's the number one way to save money with 2D Workflow. It's just going to make your life easier, and it's going to increase your ability to produce units faster, more efficiently, less mistakes. All of that saves money. And I wanted to start with that first because a lot of people just say, show me a cheaper shipment, show me how to avoid this and that. But you don't realize that if you're doing a couple thousand units a week in prep and you can increase that number, that's a huge savings in and of itself. And you run a 3PL, so I'm sure you would agree,
Yes, for sure. And one of the things I would say, like you mentioned, that really saves you money is how fast you can process those units. The faster you can process them, the more money you make, because it's all about rotation. How much, how fast you process the units in your warehouse represent directly how much you're going to be making, because
of course,
the faster you send, the more you sell, the more you sell, the more you make.
Yep. Now, you said the faster you sell. A second way second interesting way that you can make more money with 2D Workflow is we have thousands of users using 2D Workflow. And one of the things that we've noticed, and sellers have been saying this for years, is that for whatever reason, when you send inventory into Amazon with 2D barcodes, not all the time, but our data shows most of the time that inventory is received and checked in by Amazon faster. It goes live faster. It starts selling faster. So that's ultimately money that goes back into your pocket, or cash flow that's freed up a lot quicker than it normally would. So that's the second benefit. And if you want, I can share my screen and show you a couple of the other ways that
Sure.
we can save money in 2D Workflow. So let me do a share request. All right, so we got two ways to save money with 2D Workflow. Another way to save money with 2D Workflow is when you are shipping stuff to Amazon. Obviously, Amazon gives you many different ways to ship in your inventory. You have many different inbound options. You can ship to the location in the East Coast, in the West Coast, Central, and then you also have the Amazon optimized splits option. Each of these different inbound options from Amazon, they're going to have different shipping charges associated with all of them because, of course, they're all going to different locations and they're all going to have different levels of inbound placement fees. And one mistake that I see a lot of people doing is they automatically think that shipping to 5 locations is always going to be the cheapest. It's always better to do that, but that's not always the case. 2D Workflow, when you put the items that you want to ship to Amazon into a draft shipment like we have over here, and then you press the estimate all button, it's basically going to take all of the different inbound options that Amazon gives you. It's going to calculate the placement fees. It's going to calculate the shipping on all of them. And it's going to tell you for sure so that the user knows for 1,000,000% which option is really cheaper. Maybe it's the Amazon optimized splits. Maybe it's not. But at least this way you have a tool that every time you make a shipment, you're going to know this time optimized is better. Next time East Coast is better. Next time West Coast is better. So you can see I have an example here that I already did. This is a small SPD shipment. And you can see with 0 placement fees, but shipping to these 5 different locations, it's $476. With placement fees, but shipping to the one location and not the East Coast location, the Central location, it's going to be a little bit cheaper. It's going to be about $26, $27 cheaper. You can see the total price with placement fees, $449, without placement fees, $476. So this option is cheaper, and most people wouldn't even look at this. They would just always say, let me do it 5 ways. And this is like a small SPD shipment, but when you get into even bigger shipments, the savings could be $26 or $260 or $800. So it's just always important to know every time you have a batch of products that you're sending into Amazon, which is the cheapest way to ship it, and 2D Workflow is going to show you that. Now, another way that you can save money with 2D Workflow, obviously, I talk a lot about the discounted shipping that we have with our discounted carriers. That's mainly for pallet shipments, for FTL, for LTL. A lot of people don't ship pallets. A lot of people are smaller sellers. They ship with UPS. They ship small parcel. A lot of our users do that as well. And oftentimes, SPD and UPS is going to be cheaper. Of course, if you have a small shipment, 20, 30 boxes, UPS is going to be cheaper a lot of the times. But one other thing that our software does is when you are shipping an SPD shipment, it's going to give you an alert, a notification, and it's going to let you know, hey, this batch of products, even though it's a small batch, this batch is going to be cheaper if you do it LTL. Even though you only have 20 boxes and you want to save it UPS, maybe the 2D Workflow price is cheaper if you put those 20 boxes on one pallet. So in this example, this is a SPD shipment. All these shipping fees over here are the regular UPS prices. These are the same prices that you would see in Seller Central for UPS because we connect to Amazon's API. But when we get these quotes from Amazon, we're contacting our carriers at the same time, and we're telling them, hey, for this shipment, UPS is charging $389. Can you beat that? If our carriers can beat that, we put this little notification over here, this little triangle. And if you hover over it in an SPD shipment in 2D Workflow, it basically alerts you when it's cheaper to change from SPD and ship it on a pallet instead. So for example, this is small SPD shipment, only 25 boxes, 200 units. Here is the UPS price, again, $389. When you get this little notification, you hover over it, and it says this shipping option may cost less when using LTL or FTL for some shipment. And instead of doing this UPS, if you do it on a pallet, instead of costing $389, it's going to cost you $341. So that's like a $40, $50 difference on a small SPD. It's not hundreds, it's not thousands, but if you can save, every other SPD shipment, $50, $100, $200 at the end of the year, that's going to add up. Here's another example. So I wouldn't pick this one going to Homestead, Florida, because obviously Tennessee is cheaper, but it does the same thing. Shipping from where this account is located, Wisconsin to Florida, for these 25 boxes, UPS wants $576. If there is an alert, you hover over it. It says the cost to go on a pallet, one pallet, $417 instead of the $576. So it's even bigger savings. So you can just basically, again, use the shipment planner to look at all these options, and to every single time you ship to Amazon, you're always going to know what's the best way to do it. Optimize, placement fees, pallets, SPD, every single shipment you make, you're going to know what's the cheapest way to do it. And for Amazon sellers, in my opinion, that's priceless. And even for, I'm talking about SPD and UPS right now. A lot of small sellers don't know. You have 25 boxes. I can't do pallets. It's impossible. This is only 25 boxes. Has to be UPS. No, our pallet rates are so cheap that even a shipment like this for 25 boxes can be substantially cheaper going on one pallet versus going UPS and paying them an extra 60, 70 bucks. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that's another way to save money with 2D Workflow. And then really the biggest way to save money in 2D Workflow is when you have shipments and you are completing these shipments in our software. We have basically reached out to all of the different carriers that Amazon works with, and we negotiated our own discounts with these carriers. And sometimes our rates are better, sometimes Amazon's rates are better. But when you're completing a shipment in the software, I'll give you an example. Here's a one LTL shipment. Whenever you're completing a shipment in the software, this is a 5-pallet shipment. When you're completing it, you're going to be able to compare our prices versus Amazon's prices. And these are the same prices for Amazon that you would see in Seller Central. Here you see in this square for Amazon, for this pallet shipment, the cheapest option is Amazon Freight. It's $1,011. The cheapest option for 2D Workflow, $943, right? So it's about $70, $80 cheaper. You can see over here, we also show you right away which option is going to be cheaper. In this case, it's $943 with 2D Workflow. It's $1,011 with Amazon Partnered. So when you're completing the shipment, you just see multiple options. Amazon, us, your own, and it's the same idea, right? Every time you're shipping something to Amazon, you always want to compare the different options, and you always want to go with the cheapest one. Sometimes it's going to be us, sometimes it's going to be Amazon, sometimes it's going to be your own carrier, but you always want to make that comparison so you can save as much money as possible. And like I said, we're not always going to be cheaper. I think in this example, here's another small example. In this example, Amazon is cheaper. We have Central Transport for $200. They have it for $184. So when you're making this one, obviously you go with the cheapest one. And then one of my favorites is on these shipments where it's going to 5 locations where you want to avoid the placement fees. One of the things that we noticed on bigger shipments, it's hard to do these Amazon optimized splits option, because when you get rid of the placement fees, the shipping to 5 locations through Amazon is very expensive. A lot of time they're trying to screw the sellers over on these 5 different shipments going all over the country. And sometimes you are forced to do the option with the placement fees because you get rid of the placement fees, but now your shipping goes up, very expensive, so it's not worth it to do it. But with 2D Workflow on these shipments, we can have very sizable discounts. So for example, again, this is a shipment going to 5 different locations. When you go to complete the shipment, you'll see over here, Amazon Partnered for all 5 shipments combined, $14,524. It's a lot of pallets, right? There's 5 shipments. I think there's like 7 or 8 pallets per shipment. But you can see over here, Amazon Partnered, 14,000 combined, 2D Workflow, 12,009. So if you were shipping out something like this, you would save $1,500 on this one shipment alone. And then when you scroll down the list, you can compare. Here is Central Transport, cheaper than Amazon. On the next shipment, maybe they're a little cheaper, maybe we're a little cheaper, but you can compare all of these different options. And like I said, the name of the game is simply to give sellers more choices, more options, and ultimately, this is something where you're not going to save every single time with 2D workflow, but if 2 out of every 3 or 2 out of every 4 shipments are cheaper with 2D workflow, the name of the game is at the end of the year, you're going to save thousands and thousands of dollars in both placement fees and in both shipping charges alone. And the last thing that I will say is our rates are good right now, but this only came out about 3 months ago, our shipping program. In the last 3 months, we've shown the carriers how much volume we have the potential to do, and we've been renegotiating with them very aggressively. And sometime this week, our rates are going to get substantially cheaper, not a little bit cheaper, but substantially cheaper. So if we're beating Amazon 40% of the time, starting next week, we're probably going to be beating them 65% of the time.
Okay, interesting. I have a couple of questions here.
Yes.
Well, one of them is kind of reassuring what you're saying. In my case, when I start comparing and doing split shipments and trying to see which one is going to be more economic, doing with the placements fee or actually separating the shipment, I would say like 90% of the time it was not worth it. I was always paying more when I was sending split shipment instead.
And that's only because of the shipping charges.
Right, exactly.
So if the shipping charges go down.
Exactly. Plus the time that it consumes you to do that. My team, when they have to do that split shipments, it costs you a lot more money.
Yep.
At the end.
Yep.
Right.
But again, so that's not always the case. Sometimes what you said is right. It's going to be better going with an individual shipment. Sometimes it's going to be better going with a 5 shipment split shipment. But that's also the main reason why we built a shipment planner, because when you make a draft shipment, you can figure that out from the start and know which way to go. And it's interesting that you said one of your pain points were even if the 5 location shipment was cheaper, you now have to process 5 different shipments separately. So I want to tell you, we're actually working on a very cool feature. Your watchers might not know this, but you know it since you used to do workflow. You know how when you have 5 different shipments, you have to open each of them individually and prep and pack each of them individually. We're basically making one workflow for the whole entire shipment plan. So instead of opening the 5 shipments individually, you can just go into the one plan and open basically the whole entire thing in one shot and prep 5 shipments basically at the same time without going one by one, shipment by shipment. You'll be able to just go down the list, and as you're packing products, it'll give you labels for the first shipment, then labels for the second shipment, then labels for the third, basically letting you prep all 5 shipments together at the same time instead of doing one and then the other and then the other. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, that's perfect. Let me ask you another question. How me as a prep center can use your software to help all my customers to basically optimize their shipping, how I can synchronize that, because that was, I guess, one of my pain point in my prep center is that, I'm kind of
It's amazing that you asked that. We have a lot of prep centers currently using the software, but one of the things that we've been working on for almost the last year at this point is we are making a standalone version of 2D workflow specifically for prep centers that's literally coming out in less than 2 weeks. So it's going to be very similar to how 2D workflow is right now, except it's going to be fully optimized for prep centers in a sense where when you onboard a client, they're going to get an account created. They're going to have a portal that they log into. You as a prep center, you're going to be able to attach all of your prep charges to all of your units, to all of your SKUs, to the pallets, to the shipments. Clients will see this. So it's going to track all of your invoicing as a prep center. So for example, when you do a shipment for somebody and you prep their shipment and there's 1,000 units, they're going to be able to see exactly how much they owe you for that shipment based on all the different fees that you attach into it. And they're going to have a portal that they're going to be able to log in and see all the different prep fees and extra services and poly bagging and bubble bagging. You're going to make custom charges for all of that. And when you prep something in 2D workflow, they're going to see it. From their portal, they're going to be able to make inbound shipments to your prep center. They're going to send a shipment to you. They can also ship it to you using our partnered carrier, so they save money. When that shipment gets to you, there's going to be a portion in the new software where your guys in your warehouse are going to receive it. You're going to get the shipment in, you're going to open up the receiving part of the new prep center software, and then you're going to receive it almost the same way that Amazon receives your products. So your client is going to make a shipment to you. When it gets delivered to your prep center, they are going to see that it gets delivered. As you're scanning it into your warehouse, they're going to see the same way Amazon is receiving the units. They are going to see that on their end. And then the client and you're going to have an inventory column in 2D workflow in the prep center version where it's going to show you how much units they have sitting in your prep center. And then when you make shipments, you can pull that inventory right from that column, right from that unit, so right from that inventory. So it's tracking all the inventory that you have in there. When you're making shipments, you're pulling it from the in-warehouse inventory. And again, now you're able to operate like a real prep center where you set custom fees for everything you do. Customer has full insight, full access, and then it also lets you invoice them at the end of the month based on your custom charges and stuff like that.
And basically all the labeling is going to be all through the 2D flow in our end.
Everything exactly the same. And they're going to make shipments that are inbound to you. You're going to receive it. They can make shipments to Amazon, or you can make shipments to Amazon, same as now. And then you do the prep work for them. You do the labeling for them. You do everything like that you're doing. And when, items are shipped out or shipments are shipped out, they can go in and see everything that you did, and how much they owe you and what they owe you for the month and what your different fees are and all of that kind of stuff. And then how this helps a prep center client. Number one, if the prep center is using 2D workflow, you are now making shipments for them to Amazon the cheapest way possible. You're checking the planner to see maybe it should be to 5 shipments, maybe it should be to 1 shipment. You're checking the different carriers. Maybe this one is going to go with Amazon partnered, maybe this one's going to go with 2D partnered. So you're saving them money on that end. And then also when they are shipping inventory to you, we have the service that they can use our carriers to ship their inventory to you if they want, and then they get real cheap shipping that way as well. But I guess I never sent you the demo for it. I recorded like a demo for prep center owners. After we get off this call, I'm going to forward it to you so you can see exactly how it works. It's sick. It's going to be the best prep center software out there. It's going to be the same price. We're not changing the price or anything like that. When we go live inside the next week or so, you can just be upgraded to the new system. Costs the same exact thing, but now you're going to have all of these features.
Awesome. That's amazing, Larry. Thank you very much. Last question to wrap this up. It's a little bit personal question.
Sure.
Was there a moment in your journey where things didn't go as planned and you had to rethink everything?
Yes.
What did that experience teach you?
So there's, as we know, and as I think what we spoke about in the first part of this conversation, as an Amazon seller, things never go as planned because Amazon is always surprising us with stuff, right? And so you have to figure it out. Like, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, Amazon came out and they announced a new 3.5% fuel surcharge fee. All of a sudden, our fees are up. All of a sudden, you're paying on average 17, 18 cents a unit. So all the time, we have to figure out new stuff. One of the most difficult times, though, in the journey for me was the first part of my journey selling on Amazon from 2012 up until about 2021, right around the COVID time. I started selling internationally. I was selling in the European markets a lot more than I was doing any business in the US markets. And I built my business that way. I built my livelihood that way. I made a money on the European side of the business. And then COVID hit. And because of COVID, Amazon really hurt us in a lot of different ways. Number one, for a couple of months, they stopped letting us ship. We can't ship to Europe. Our business is dying. Number two, the cost of shipping during COVID went up dramatically, more than doubled. So now we're not profitable anymore on a lot of stuff. And then number three, because of COVID and the economies all over the world, and because specifically of Brexit in the UK, their currency went from about 1.7 pounds to the dollar to 1.1. And that currency conversion killed that business for us. So, 70% of our items that were profitable were no longer profitable at that time. And in 2021, 2022, I had to do a pivot and basically say, European business is dead. It had a nice run. Now it's 10% of what it was. Now I have to figure something else out. I wasn't doing giant, big US business at the time, but it was either pack it up, retire, go do something else, or my UK business is dead. I have to figure something else out. I dived in headfirst into the US business and really figured that out. And really the lesson from that is don't quit. But that was like a time where I had to pivot, where I built this beautiful business and it completely got wiped out. And I had to essentially restart from the beginning. And, today we have a business that's doing 35, 40 million in sales in the US, where before it was doing just a fraction of that. But if I would have quit, wouldn't be around today in that regard.
Amazing story. Amazing story. Thank you very much, Larry. If someone want to find you and want to contact you for this amazing software, what would be the best way?
You can check out the software at 2dworkflow.com, and then you can follow me at Watch Me Amazon on all of the major social platforms, Instagram, YouTube, X, all of that stuff on there.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. My pleasure. And I hope to speak to you soon. And when we get off the call, I'm going to send you an email with the demo of the Prep Center software. So right now we're working very closely with our Prep Center partners. Whenever you get a few minutes, please check it out. If there's something because I don't run a Prep Center, so I don't know, but if there's something in that video or in the software that a Prep Center needs and we're missing, just let me know. We'd love to put it in there for you guys.
Yeah, definitely need something. I've been trying to find something, but there's nothing in the market.
I'm gonna show it to you, but like I said, I don't know what I don't know. So watch the video when you can. If you think that the software should be doing something else for prep centers, let me know. We'd be 100% happy to put it in there, man.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Larry.
Thanks, man. I'll see you soon.
Awesome.